Coming up on Access Tech Live.
Making gaming accessible for everyone with Ablegamers. Apple announces a new pencil. Oh my. And Xbox Game Studios' Tara Volker is with us.
This is Access Tech Live with Scott and Marc Aflalo. The latest in tech and accessibility every week. Follow us and get involved now at Access Tech Live.
Hey everyone, welcome along to another Access Tech Live. I am Scott. Marc Aflalo, as always, is with me here every week on the show. You can join me and Marc Aflalo talking tech. A new Apple Pencil, oh my. What an introduction that is. A new piece of tech, Marc Aflalo. Come on, you're supposed to be more
excited about it. Come on.
It's a new Apple thing.
We don't hide our excitement here on the show. Come on.
Oh, I could tell. Hey, listen, I had a great time in Amsterdam. I am back here in my little studio once again, and it is great to be back. Did you miss me?
I did. I missed you extremely, even though it felt like you were I could reach out and touch you, Stephen. I felt you were that close to me in Amsterdam.
Please don't do that. But hey, listen, it is great to be here once again. As you said at the top of the show, it's all about gaming today. We're going to be talking to Tara Volker. She is the Senior Xbox Game Studios Accessibility Lead. That's quite a lot for a business card, I have to say, and I can't imagine what that feels like in Braille. Also, co-director of Game Accessibility Conference, or GA Conf as it's known, also will be joining us. And Mark Barlet a bit later, the founder of Ablegamers, joining us to talk about their organization. All of that to come on the show, but let's dive right into those headlines.
Now, Access Tech Live headlines.
Well, Sony's announced a new controller designed to improve gaming accessibility for people with disabilities. The controller features various accessibility options, including programmable buttons, larger touchpads, and easy-to-use ports for external devices, such as switches and joysticks. Physically, the controller has a circular design with buttons around the circumference, and those match the buttons on a traditional PlayStation controller. There's a large button in the middle, and off to the side, a little joystick that closely resembles an old-fashioned arcade joystick, Stephen. Sony's Access controller, as they will call it, will be available worldwide on December the 6th for $90 US. We'll update you with a Canadian price once we have it. Google announced some new features to Android 14 specifically around accessibility. Some of the highlights include accessible walking routes for obviously Google Maps, and wheelchair accessibility will now be clearer to view and easier to use in Google Maps. Disabled-owned businesses will now be called out in Maps and Search, and the Magnifier app makes the camera more accessible in your Pixel devices, and this goes all the way back to the Pixel 4 and later. Elgato, a maker of great tools for creators and tech heads, have announced a new device, a teleprompter, ideal for presenters, creators, or anyone who really has any difficulty memorizing entire scripts like Stephen, us, or have anxiety in front of a camera. This new device acts as a secondary display to your computer, and it reflects whatever you drag onto the prompter. It's priced at just $279 Canadian, so we're expecting it around $279 US, so we're expecting it around $325 Canadian, and it's available to order right now. Finally, we were so excited about this off the top. Apple has announced its third generation Apple Pencil. This new version features a matte finish and a flat side that magnetically attaches to the side of an iPad for storage. It's compatible with any USB-C equipped iPad and features a sliding cap that reveals a USB-C charging port. It'll be available this November for 109 Canadian dollars. So, Stephen, USB-C charging, does that mean it doesn't charge magnetically? We really got to dig into this. This pencil is so exciting.
Yeah, this is absolutely not the best pencil since the last one, by the sounds of it. And they've hidden the USB charging port, which I kind of find funny, right? They really don't like talking about this USB-C, so much so they're starting to hide it in their products.
Yeah, anything we can do to make sure you don't know it's there, right?
Absolutely. I don't, personally, this is not a product for me, because I have to say the pencil for me is the least accessible tool. And also, in fairness, I haven't used a real pencil in about 2 decades. Even if I have to sign for something at the door for, say, a parcel these days, I'm using my finger on a touch screen. So I'm not even using a pen for that. Do you use the Apple Pencil? Because I think, if I'm honest, this is very much for creators, for designers, okay, for taking notes, I guess, as well. And I'm just going to say it, sighted people, all right? Sighted people, there, I said it.
My daughter loves it for drawing, and she uses Procreate, and she draws all types of stuff. I've used it for taking notes, but I found it not the most intuitive thing in the world, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes I just prefer to either just type notes or just use a pen and paper, or sometimes just hit the voice activation button and let it dictate notes. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. And they're saying this is the new entry-level Apple Pencil. This is probably why there's the lack of magnetic charging or wireless charging. Don't hold me to that, by the way. I gotta dig deeper into the details of this one when it does come out. We'll give you our full 35-second review. I promise we'll give it the attention that it definitely deserves when it does come out in a month from now.
Hang on, did you say that you could press a button and make voice notes using it?
No, I didn't say you can do that with a pencil. I said I prefer sometimes hitting the microphone button and letting dictation take notes for me instead of using a pencil or using my hands. Yeah, Stephen, I go for the lazy approach. I don't know if you figured that out about me quite yet, but if it's the path of least resistance, then I'm going to go for it, even if it means that I'm trying to figure out what on earth was said in the meeting 3 days later, and I'm like, this didn't quite transcribe it very well. I will figure it out. Don't worry. It's okay. I promise. Full review of that. Okay,
I just had in my head, I just had all this great potential for this, but you've absolutely trashed it, so thank you. Yes, I go back to what I said earlier. Terrible. Okay, so question of the day. We've got to move on to this because, honestly, this is a great question that we came up with this week, and it has got a lot of people talking online. Of course, we put this out on our social media at Access Tech Live through the course of the week, as we always do. So you make sure you're following us online so you can get ahead of the game when it comes to what we're talking about. And ahead of the game is actually a good phrase for this week.
Seriously.
The question we're asking is, what is your favorite classic video game, right? What is your favorite classic video game? It could be anything. It could be console, mobile, anything. What is your favorite classic video game? Mark, what's yours?
Oh, a friend of mine wrote on my Facebook feed when I asked this question. He said, Mark, you know what it is. And I'd have to go with him. It's a game called Wing Commander that we used to play countless hours a night until, honestly, I'd forget that we were even on the phone together playing this game. It wasn't a game you could even play with somebody. We would just individually play the game, which was kind of fun. But I'm more curious to know what your answer is going to be, because I have a feeling it's somewhat analog.
Well, it is. And interestingly, you'd think, well, what kind of games would I be playing? But, I had better vision when I was younger. So there were two games that stuck out for me. Sonic the Hedgehog was the first game I ever played. Grand Theft Auto, the very first one, when it was like an aerial view. Remember that? You had the aerial view of the cars, and you were just kind of like in a bus or a car walking around.
Totally,
Everything was aerial. And they had a wonderful London version of that game that came out, which was just hilarious because everyone was so polite whilst committing atrocities. But at the same time, I also loved Snake. So Snake on the Nokia. How cool was Snake?
Snake was really cool, and you're not the only person to say that. Brad here on Facebook wrote Snake as well on the Nokia 8810. We got a lot of people from AMI being in on this. Everybody likes this topic, It's not the complicated ones that you have to think about. It's the easy ones, like Karen McGee here writes Pac-Man. I own a version of it for almost every system I have. Miss Pac-Man, my sister writes. Someone writes Mortal Kombat, the original one. We've got over 30 responses for this, so we're going to definitely get to this later on in the show, I promise you. And of course, if you want to weigh in, all you got to do is follow us on social media. It is at Access Tech Live, and answer that question, which is, what is your favorite classic video game? And it could be anything. It could be a console, it could be mobile, it could be Game Boy, it could be, you name the console, and we will talk about it. So again, if you want to email us, it's feedback@accesstechlive.com. And of course, all social media, it is Access Tech Live. Answer that question. Stephen, Tara Volker standing by and is going to help us dissect the news of the week. Plus, as the co-director of the Game Accessibility Conference, which happened a couple of weeks back, I think she's perfect person to answer that question of the week as well. So stick around. This is Access Tech Live.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on social media and get involved at Access Tech Live. We'll be right back. The latest in tech and accessibility. This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
I don't hear you either. We're back on Access Tech Live. Stephen Scott in Glasgow, Scotland. Marc Aflalo here in beautiful Montreal. I feel like the weather is turning for all of us, so hopefully you're somewhere warm. I'm very pleased to welcome our guest this week. She is the Senior Xbox Game Studios Accessibility Lead. She's also the co-director of the Game Accessibility Conference. Tara Volker, thank you so much for being with us this week.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm also joined by another accessibility specialist, Leon the cat. And
I
so
like
he's
Leon.
also, yeah, he's going to be here to answer questions as well. Isn't that true, Leon? Yeah.
I'm sure he's a great interview. I'm sure you have many a conversation when you're quiet. I also noticed the cat ears on your headset, which is pretty cool as well.
He's literally turning off my camera. Okay, sorry, you don't have to be so rude about it.
This is why we do this show live, Tara. It's so that you can try to push us to our limits and see if there's ever a breaking point, and we're not going to get to that. I promise you. Thank you so much for being with us. You're going to be with us for a while today. I appreciate that. And before we dive into the news, I got to ask you, because that title on your business card, not only is it a long one, I'm sure, I got to know what it's about and what you do on a day-to-day, not only with obviously on the Xbox side, but also on the Game Accessibility Conference, because your world is definitely way more fun than mine.
First off, your world is also very, very fun, so don't put yourself down like that. But yeah, it is a lot, and it's a very long title. So within the world of gaming at Microsoft, at Xbox, one of our business units is the Xbox Game Studios, and that is all of the different independent studios who make all of our video games. They get published under Xbox. And so I work with all of those studios to help them make their games as accessible as they can be. And so it's learning, it's teaching, it's consulting, it's running a champs program, a little bit of everything. And I'm really lucky because I get to work with some really amazing teams. But when I'm not doing that, yeah, I'm the co-director of the Game Accessibility Conference. And that is a conference that happens twice a year, once in the US, once in the UK, fully dedicated to just teaching devs about accessibility and disability in the video game space. And that's, putting together a whole event, which, you run a TV show, you understand how hard this is.
Tara, hi, it's Stephen here. And I just wanted to ask you about your feelings about other companies like Sony, because of course we've been hearing a lot about adaptive controllers. Sony, Xbox, of course, very similar what Sony's bringing out to what Microsoft did over a year ago. What's your take on that, and what's your feelings about that level of development we're seeing, bringing in accessibility into more games companies, into more companies generally releasing games?
I think it's absolutely amazing. One of the things I love about the controller that Sony is releasing, which I have pre-ordered because I want to check it out and I want to play with it, is that it's not the exact same as we built the adaptive controller. We have always talked about, hey, this was our go, but it's not perfect. And, we want to continue our accessibility journey. And it's great to see another company building a controller that's trying to reach the same goal of, inclusion of people with mobility disabilities. And, they solved it in a different way. So now there's so much that we can learn from each other, but it also means there's more choice for consumers. And, when you get to make a choice and pick the product that works best for you, that's when you're going to have the best experience. So I want more of these controllers, because there was also the Nintendo released one that came out, I think via Hori, so it's not quite the same. But the fact that, there are now multiple controllers that you'll be able to choose from, I think is amazing. Because if you would have asked me, 5-6 years ago, oh, do you think there will be multiple accessibility controllers available? I probably would have laughed at you. I didn't see it coming. So this is fantastic, and I want more.
No, absolutely. I think, though, it's often good at this point, especially with you here, Tara, to kind of stop and take stock a little bit. So for people who don't live and breathe gaming, and I'm one of those people, to be perfectly honest, and there are reasons for that, and we'll get into that later, but I want you to tell us, if you can, where we're at the moment with accessible gaming in 2023.
Right now, we are at this sort of watershed moment. We are seeing more accessibility for more companies in more games at a higher level of investment that we've ever seen before. So we are on a peak of exponential growth in the industry. And I'm saying here today, wow, there's so much accessibility that didn't exist even a couple of years ago. I'm sure that I'll say the exact same thing 2 years from now. Oh my goodness, there's so much accessibility today that didn't happen a couple of years ago. We're seeing new hardware. We're seeing new options in game. We're seeing even just gaming events being more physically accessible to gamers with disabilities. And all of this is, still relatively new as a phenomenon.
Why do you think it is that it's moving so fast in this particular area? Because if you look at everything else in the world, and you look at whether it's consumer hardware or just the world in general, it seems like it's always little baby steps, and we're always having to force the subject. But gaming, at least in my perspective, and I'm kind of with Steven, where I'm not a hardcore gamer, but my son is, the amount of stuff we're hearing about accessibility in gaming, whether it's the gameplay, whether it's people like Steve Saylor, or just it's in our face more and more, which is phenomenal. But why so fast? Because it feels like it's taken decades to even bring up this conversation. What's changed?
I think the biggest thing is that game developers are trying to create experiences for everyone to enjoy. Game developers are creating, not just entertainment, but really art in sort of a way. And we want everyone to be able to play our games. We want everyone to, get to have that narrative, that experience. And I think because we are so connected to our consumer base, because we are also frequently our consumer base, that we have much larger empathy for other players in our products, and so we want to engage. And I think the other thing that also is starting to happen is, some of the earliest game devs, like they're starting to age. Maybe they're starting to get some arthritis. Maybe they themselves don't have the dexterity they used to have when they first started making games. And so I think there's also a bit of like future protection happening. I think a lot of game devs are like, oh man, as I grow older, I want to continue playing. So we need to invest in accessibility now so that as I age, I can continue to game.
You work with the game studios with a lot of them, if not all of them. Have they been receptive to accessibility in gaming? Is it something that they're feeling they have to like kind of go back and figure out how to make it happen? Or is it like, I use Microsoft as an example, it's in the DNA now. It's from the start, accessibility is an issue, and they make sure they're building with accessibility in mind. Is that industry the same now?
I would say that as an industry as a whole, we're getting a lot better about being aware of accessibility. But there are definitely people who are in different stages of their accessibility journey. So there are some studios, Turn 10, Naughty Dog, some of the ones in Ubisoft who do have it built into their DNA. There are other studios who are just starting and they're still kind of in the retrofitting phase. Like they have made a game and realized that it has gaps in terms of accessibility. So they're trying to go back in and patch it, which is, going to still result in a more accessible game, but not the level of accessibility we see from some titles across the industry today. But overall, like, I don't think there is any game development team out there who's like sitting there being like, oh, I don't want disabled players to play my game. Like, I don't want to invest in accessibility. Like, I don't think that's a thing. I think that if there are studios who are doing less accessible work, it's normally that they're just earlier in their accessibility journey and they're trying to understand the problem. Accessibility challenges in a title are really just a problem to be solved. And normally if the problem isn't being solved in those titles, it's just that they don't fully understand the problem space yet.
I think back to my own experience, Tara, and, as someone who has gone blind over time, losing vision and enjoying games like Sonic the Hedgehog and, the early Grand Theft Autos back in the day, and now being unable to play games, I feel that there's perhaps maybe a little bit of a disconnect in the community between those people who may want to find their way back in. Do you think maybe what needs to be done on that to sort of bring players like myself, like others who have gone away from gaming, who maybe feel that it's just too much to learn, too much, and also how much is available to me as a blind gamer, for example?
Yeah, so that's a challenge that we actually have around all different areas of disability. Like even as someone who gets like motion sick, today's games make me much more motion sick than the old school games, right? So as technology has advanced, we've gotten new problems in terms of accessibility. There are gamers like you who gamed and then kind of fell out during that period of time where accessibility wasn't a priority for the industry. And games really did advance rapidly during that time. It's honestly a challenge we even see with, Forza Motorsport that just came out and blind driving assist. It is a lot to learn. And so what we've been trying to do, and I've seen other studios do as well, is partner with people who are high profile influencers in the gaming space to translate that lived experience to try to help everyone get ramped up and understand, like create additional tutorials and help people get ramped up to figure it out. Because yeah, exactly like you said, it's Sonic is very different than some of the games that we'll see today, or even the newest Sonics that come out, right? Like those are 3D games. And so there is definitely a learning barrier, but it's actually a problem that the entire industry has, even outside the space of accessibility, that games can be really intimidating. Like my mom was a huge gamer on the NES, and she doesn't really game anymore because she's just very overwhelmed by the sheer amount of buttons that exist on a controller now, right? So it's definitely an industry-wide problem, regardless of if you have a disability or not.
Yeah, I'm definitely overwhelmed by buttons on the controller too. Tara, stick around. We're going to take a quick break, and I want you to get your mind working on our question of the week, which is, what is your favorite classic video game? And it could be anything, whether it's console, mobile, anything. We're going to get to your answer, but later, along with about like 40 others that are going online. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're also going to be welcomed by another guest, Marc Barlet, is the founder of Ablegamers. He's going to talk about their organization and more with Tara coming up here on Access Tech Live.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on social media and get involved at Access Tech Live. We'll be right back. The latest in tech and accessibility. This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Access Tech Live. I am Stephen Scott. Marc Aflalo is with me this hour. Marc Barlet is the founder of an organization that believes everyone should have the opportunity to enjoy the world of gaming regardless of their abilities. And that organization is called Ablegamers. And Marc Aflalo had a chance to sit down with Marc Barlet to find out how they do it.
Marc, tell me about Ablegamers. Let's pretend that I've done no research whatsoever. I've come to this unprepared. Tell us about how this all began.
So Ablegamers is a nonprofit that I founded, and our mission is to enable play in order to combat social isolation among people with disabilities. And what that really ultimately means is we use video games to give people with disabilities awesome opportunities to connect with other people around the world.
Where did the idea come from? Is it something that you experienced yourself?
Yeah, so I am a person with disabilities myself. I'm a service-disabled Air Force veteran, but my disability largely doesn't affect the way I play games. My original disability, and I like to say my original because I got more as I grew older, was a lower extremity disability. And so, I always saw games as I always was able to enjoy games the way I'd always enjoyed games. What really was the catalyst behind the founding of Ablegamers is, I used games to stay connected with my friends, and we still played together, and we played EverQuest every Friday. Me and my husband, her and her husband, we would play EverQuest, and this was what we did every Friday. And one Friday, at the given time that we were supposed to play, I had Ventrilo on, and I was waiting for my friends to log in so we could go farm some orcs or something like that. And my friend didn't log in. And so I waited a few minutes. My friend didn't log in. And so I picked up the phone. When I picked up the phone, Albert, my best friend's husband, answered the phone, and I could hear Stephanie, my best friend from the 6th grade, crying in the background. What had happened was a few years prior, Stephanie was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And that afternoon, MS had decided that her mousing hand wasn't going to work anymore. So the hand that she used to control her mouse was just not going to function. And I was like, hold on a second, like, wait, we got to play EverQuest. And it really kind of dawned on me that while I was a person with disabilities, I was watching a disability take away my friend's ability to game. And I really like felt something really strong there, of all of a sudden this realization that a disability could remove gaming from somebody. And so I spent that evening trying to find answers for her. This was 2004. The internet had solved all of our problems. Still waiting on that, but but I wasn't finding anything around this. I wasn't finding anyone really talking about accessibility. I wasn't really finding anyone who had solved this problem. And I was a technologist. I knew how to build a website. And so I took it as a calling and decided that I was going to solve it.
What was the first adaptive piece of tech that you built?
The thing that I used to actually help my friend Stephanie get back in the game was this product called an ErgoDex DX1 at the time. It was this really cool, like, I still wish it was around today, but it's not. But it was like a board that was about a square foot, and it came with all of these little keys. And you could just, they had little sticky bottoms, and you could stick the keys anywhere on this square foot board in any configuration you wanted to. And you could program keystrokes to them. So it allowed my friend to build a ad hoc custom keyboard specifically for playing games, because she was having challenges with traversing a regular keyboard and everything like that. And if you remember the good old days of MMOs, it was just like all the number key. You only needed like a mouse, some number keys, a space bar, and everything. So to be able to build a controller like in this little tiny space was really powerful. And it was designed for graphic artists to help like do shortcuts in Photoshop. But
yeah, it's like the old man's Stream Deck, right?
Yeah. And but we'd gotten great use of it, of just creating these little custom keyboards for people that needed them.
What is it about gaming that you think, and this is totally your opinion, that helps people with disabilities kind of get outside of their comfort zone?
You asked me that question, but I actually know scientifically that in fact people with disabilities get a sense of enablement. If you think about disabilities, the ability to run, to explore, to jump, to do things that might not be possible for you in real life, but the video game, a well-crafted video game lets us all experience these things. And so to me, the right answer there is enablement. It gives people with disabilities that equal experience to do.
Does the entrance of some of the big name companies, does it worry you? Do you feel like it's competition? Is it just reinforcing what you've been doing for now 20 years? How do you look at that?
We help drive that. So the reality is, through the work of Ablegamers, we put out in 2018 something called the Accessible Player Experience Patterns. This was an academically derived set of design patterns that really helped inform game developers how to craft experiences that included people with disabilities. Previous to that, we had written the includification guidelines back in 2011, but this really superseded it because, I'm so lucky to have Dr. Chris Power, Dr. Paul Carnes, these really intelligent people, part of our organization, and they're doing this work. And we discovered this when we talked about these patterns, and we built a tool that worked with game companies. They created really rich, accessible experiences. And my mission, again, is to enable play in order to combat social isolation. So I look at all of these games making accessible features, my mission incarnate. I see it as them, because now, a player who is, visually impaired or has an auditory disability is going to be able to bring a game up that's going to have the things that will help them have the experience they want to have, because these design patterns have helped guide the game developers to crafting those experiences without necessarily having to have all the nuances that come with disability in and of itself.
One of the things we notice in the tech space is that companies, the Microsofts of the world, the Apples of the world, Googles of the world, come out and talk about how accessibility is in their DNA, and it's no longer about adapting something for people with disabilities. It's about building from the ground up with everybody in mind, that universal design. Do you think that transcends into video games? Because I feel like, when you use the word accessibility in video games, it's not something that naturally goes hand in hand, or hadn't. I think it's definitely more on the radar now.
So, when I started, I was in the accessibility space for the longest time as a day job. Ablegamers has not been my day job for very long. I worked for the federal government for a long time and was, in the 508 world and things like that. And, I actually started when I got into gaming really trying to figure out how universal design fit into game accessibility. And I was kind of largely an advocate, and in fact wrote a paper that got published on an alternative to universal design looking at gaming. But as you know, as we grew as an organization, and as I was, you know, able to really bring people together, you know, the APX stuff that Dr. Power and Dr. Carnes came up with really are universal design principles. They really are that. And why we're seeing such a move for accessibility in the gaming space is because the patterns are letting game companies make accessible decisions in the early storyboarding stages. And so the end products are extremely accessible because, you know, they solved how a person with a visual impairment is going to know that they just leveled at a storyboard 4 years ago, not back in the old days, you know, 2016, 2017, we would have companies reach out to us and say, hey, our game releases in a month. What can we do from accessibility? And I'd be like, nothing. Yeah, like that ship has sailed.
Do you think representation is important in video games?
Oh yeah, because we just wrote a piece at Ablegamers. We published it yesterday on representation. Yes, not only, you know, gaming is about storytelling. When you look at games today, they're not, you know, there are side scrollers out there, but when you look at some really, you know, great games out there, they're about, you know, immersive storytelling, interactive storytelling. And we want to see stories that keep people with disabilities in mind. We want those stories to be genuine stories. We want them to be characters that we can relate to. So representation is important, and we are starting to see companies really put resources into making sure that that representation is genuine.
Yeah, Mark, you talk about you know, being on the cusp of 20 years with this organization, seeing these things come to life like this. Obviously, it must be validating to what you've been doing, number one. But do you have that sense of pride based on the way the industry is now evolving, even though it has taken so long?
That's an incredibly good question, and the answer is no and yes at the same time. And let me parse that out, because the reality is, if I try to take it in all at once, it becomes slightly overwhelming. I know that's hard to understand, but like when I started Ablegamers, and shortly after it, Steve Spahn, you know, joined me, and we started on this journey 20 years ago. Like, to look at where we are and to imagine that a couple of people who just wanted games to be better on the outside of gaming was able to affect the level of change that we've been able to affect has done a couple of things to me. One, I tell people all the time, and I get the privilege to be able to speak to groups all the time, which is, if you see an injustice and you want to change it, I am positive, I am living proof that if you're willing to put the work in, you can make a change. Because a handful of people, I mean, I kid you not, like, for the longest time, Ablegamers could fit in a Ford Explorer. We were able to affect a $150 billion a year industry. It took a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time. But I'm immensely proud, but at the same time, it can easily overwhelm you if you let it.
So before the conversation ends, where do you see the Ablegamers, and where do you see the industry as a whole in 10 years from now?
So I think all the parts are in place for us to continue to support the individuals, because the truth is, the club that is disabilities is always accepting new members, whether you want to join us or not. I think in 10 years, we build the capacity to help more, to do more. But in my mind, it looks very similar to what we do today.
Well said. Well said indeed. And if you want to learn more about Mark, of course, and Ablegamers, you can head over to ablegamers.org. That's ablegamers.org. Coming up, Tara Volker is going to be rejoining us. We're going to ask her the question of the day, and we're going to find out more about her works with the Game Accessibility Conference and, of course, Xbox. Stick around. It is Access Tech Live.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on social media and get involved at Access Tech Live. We'll be right back. latest in tech and accessibility. This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Welcome back. I am Stephen Scott. Marc Aflalo is with me. Also, our guest this week is the Senior Xbox Game Studios Accessibility Lead. She's also the co-director of the Game Accessibility Conference. Tara Volker is back with us. Great to have you back here, Tara, along with your cats as well.
Yes.
Must mention the cats. Now, look, we mentioned Forza earlier, and just last week, of course, Forza Motorsports was released, and we featured here on the show our mutual friend Steve Saylor and his reaction to playing the game and winning a race. I want to ask you, though, Tara, what kind of work, and I can only imagine the amount, but what kind of work goes into making a game like Forza, a driving game, playable by someone who can't see?
Honestly, the biggest part of the work is the partnership with people who cannot see or don't see well to make sure that we're figuring out their needs. I talked before about you have to understand the problem to solve it. And for us, it was a really fun challenge because obviously the people we're trying to unlock a racing simulation experience for were people who can't race cars in real life. So that was a fun challenge. But for us, it was a lot of rounds of feedback. We knew it was going to have to be audio-based, and we actually took a lot of learnings from other racing, even real-life events that take place. Like, in the game now, there is a voice who will tell you what type of turn is coming up. Is it right? Is it left? How sharp is the turn? And, that was partially inspired by rally car drivers because they will have a co-pilot who is telling them what is coming up so that they can prepare. So, it's pulling in, things from real life we can be inspired by. It's hearing from people with disabilities what they need. And then, once you get the idea, once you get as what we lovingly refer to as the beeps and boops going in game, just going through those rounds of feedback and seeing if it works. And if it doesn't work, being okay and prepared to go back to the drawing board and make changes.
Was there a point at all in that development where you weren't even sure if it was going to work, if it was going to become accessible? And you talk about the beeps and boops and going back to the drawing board, but I can imagine that there's a point in time when you're trying to develop this that you're just not sure. Was there ever a point where you said this just may not happen?
I think at the very beginning, like we had the goal. So if you go back in 2019, one of the lead designers of Forza, he actually gave a talk at the Game Accessibility Conference, and there was a slide about future goals, and one of them was to become blind accessible. But we literally had no idea how. So at that point, we were like, this may not actually happen, but we're hoping by willing that goal, saying that goal publicly, maybe, it will make it happen. But, we had ideas. And once we kind of got our first round of ideas and we got those first rounds of feedback, I think once we saw it, we didn't think, oh, this can't happen. We just thought, oh, we're close, but this isn't it. And I think there was a lot of, oh, we're close, but this isn't it. Oh, we're close, but this isn't it. And then going through that iteration. But I think once we got our first kind of demo actually in front of someone, we're like, okay, we can do this. We didn't know how long it would take. We didn't know if it would, be ready for when this game launched when we started, but we knew we would get there eventually. So we were determined.
Yeah. No pun intended here, but I want to shift gears for a second and talk about gaming in the cloud, because, we see on one hand things and services like Xbox Cloud Gaming gaining incredible momentum. It's coming to the new MetaQuest 3 soon. You look at devices like Apple's iPhone taking a really big gaming focus on stage, keynotes and stuff like that. But then on the other hand, you look at services like Google Stadia, which is basically shut down, which is not terribly surprising from Google because they tend to try things and just kind of shelve them. So is there a clear path towards a future where we're not going to have a console anymore?
I think so I don't know. And I want to be like fully transparent. I'm not on the part of Xbox that would know. So this is literally me being like,
This is why you're here. We want your opinion too,
So for me, I have got to see really cool stuff happening in cloud gaming for years. So before I worked at Xbox, like I actually worked at PlayStation on their cloud streaming service, PlayStation Now. And the tech that is in all of these game streaming services, whether it's Xbox, PlayStation, whoever else. They are so cool. And I feel like there's such great opportunities because hardware can be so expensive. And I don't know if we're there yet, but I think all of the major companies continue to make these sort of investments, like I don't see why we could, like, to me, it's like an accessibility issue. Like, hardware is expensive, and like people with disabilities already have enough problems, particularly in the US with our healthcare system and how our disability, program works in the US. Like, they already have enough problems in terms of finances. So like figuring out how we could remove the console as a barrier to gaming and utilizing things you already have, like, is fantastic. I mean, and even if you look at stuff like, like xCloud from Xbox, like you can right now, already stream games on your PC, and there's the ability to stream things to phones and everything. So like I think we're already getting there, and I think we just have to be patient and let the tech catch up. But honestly, I actually think the biggest barrier isn't going to be the tech coming from the companies. I think it's going to be infrastructure in the world. Like, I grew up in a really, really rural area. And even like when I go and visit my brother, like it struggles because like their infrastructure hasn't been upgraded. So I actually think like I think there will always be hardware consoles because there are literally just areas where the infrastructure is not good enough for cloud gaming. And I have no idea if I actually answered your question in there, if I just had a ramble about cloud gaming.
Tara, I want to take you back a couple of weeks because you hosted the 2023 Game Accessibility Conference, the GA Conf. What were some of your highlights?
Oh, honestly, the thing I love most about the conference is I get to learn from other teams and how they are doing work, which means I can, borrow their ideas and put them into my own job. Some of the talks I thought were absolutely amazing. First off, EA, they had 2 speakers come and talk about Dead Space. And for me, I love horror games. But I'm also someone who has PTSD, and PTSD and other mental health conditions are new areas in terms of accessibility in video games. Like, there are essentially blockers for us as well. And I absolutely loved how EA talked about all of the work that they did to put in gore mitigation, to put in trigger warnings, but actually have them implemented in games. Like, if you didn't want to see, the alien being ripped apart or whatever, like you don't have to, because that's not, it's a part of the game, but there's so much more to Dead Space. So I absolutely loved that they did a talk about that. And honestly, one of the other talks I absolutely loved, Ubisoft, one of their communication leads, Jessica, she came and talked about Ubisoft's communication plan in terms of accessibility, and they are industry leading. So they, it's super, super important to get accessibility information out as early as possible so players can make informed choices. And literally earlier this year with one of the new Prince of Persia game announces, they got the accessibility information out for the game the day of the project announced, like 7 months ahead of launch, which is like unheard of. It's amazing. So Ubisoft was able to come and talk about how they did that, the program they have in place, and how they facilitate getting accessibility information out to their players. And like, I was just absolutely amazed. And then my final one, because I'm going to plug one more. There was a game, Another Crab's Treasure, which is an indie developer, a small team that's actually based out of the Seattle area. And they gave a talk about you can give the character who's a crab a gun that does like one-hit kills. And they were just like, sometimes you just need to have fun, and that's okay in accessibility. So there's a 15-minute micro talk on giving players fun by adding a gun. And it was, it was hysterical, wow. But accessible. It was amazing. We could have made the whole show about this, because I could literally could hype up any of the talks by any of the people at the conference. They were amazing.
It is incredible. Tara, it has been so much fun having you here today. Thank you so much for being with us on Access Tech Live.
But wait, before you go, Tara, I got to ask you your answer to the question of the day, which is what your favorite classic video game is. And it could be anything, console, mobile, you name it. What is it?
So my favorite classic game is the original Zelda on the Super Nintendo. So for me, it's the first game I ever beat. And it's what kicked off my love of gaming. I even have like a Zelda Triforce tattoo on my wrist. And like it, I'm still playing Zelda games. And so like it'll just always have a special place in my heart. And my mom beat it too. My mom was also super into Zelda. So there's also like some daughter mommy gaming action. So I think that's also why it has like a special place in my heart.
Tara, if people want to follow you, where can they do that?
They can find me on the platform formerly known as Twitter, Lady Au Pair, LATIEAUPAIR.
Tara Volker, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We're going to have you on again. We'll spend a whole time just talking about the game conference, I promise you, in the future. And you guys at home, what's your answer to the question? We're going to get to those in just a second right here on Access Tech Live.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on social media and get involved at Access Tech Live. We'll be right back. The latest in tech and accessibility. This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Welcome back, and before we go, we're going to, of course, dive into the feedback. I just want to say, though, thank you so much to Tara Volker. Great to have her on. And, of course, what a brilliant question of the day to ask her, especially. What is your favorite classic video game? That's the question. What have been the responses, Mark?
Oh my God, it's gone absolutely crazy. I've got close to 50 responses here. We're not going to get to all of them. So thank you for contributing at Access Tech Live. Michelle writes, it's a toss-up. I have the fondest memories of playing Space Invaders with my mom and sister on our old Atari console, but I still play Tetris to this day on my mobile. I got to figure out where she actually plays Tetris because I want to do that. Ben Miner, Perfect Dark on Nintendo 64, Aladdin on Genesis. My God, I don't think I ever even owned a Genesis system. Mark Seaman, I love his name. Banjo-Kazooie. Honestly, I don't even know what game that is. Such an awesome, fun, and funny, innovative platform that introduced us to the next best tandem, only behind Mario and Luigi, in my opinion. I can't argue there, but I don't know who Banjo-Kazooie is. Jason DC writes, original Nintendo, specifically Mario 3, Tetris, and Dr. Mario. Steven, did you know they just announced they're doing a follow-up to Mario 3, so we're actually going to get that side screen kind of motion. It's going to be so much fun.
Nice.
I know, it's crazy. Bianca writes, Pokemon Snap on N65, perfection. Noah writes Contra on Nintendo. Lori, hands down, Yoshi's Island and Castlevania. I'm going too fast for the screen, Stephen, because there's just so many responses. and so many more people reached out from all sides. Centipede is one of the answers. Jenny Bovard wrote Tetris as well. Aaron Mix says Nintendo and Super Mario 3, N64, Duke Nukem. So many answers. I guess the trick here, Stephen, is no serious topics. Questions that can have really kind of just, what is it? It's a nostalgic value, right?
Everyone loves nostalgia. Yeah.
I love it. And still nobody other than Brad agrees with you on Snake for the Nintendo. Nintendo Nokia.
I don't think it was as popular. Yeah, I don't think maybe as popular.
Come on. I enjoyed it. You know what? I should have asked Mark Barlet at Ablegamers what his opinion was on the question as well. But you know what? Yeah, keep letting us know. We'll let you know when we're going to stop taking submissions. Maybe we'll continue this into next week until we introduce another topic. But that's a wrap. That's it. We're done. No more Amsterdam for you. We're back in studio. It was a success. Thank you, of course, to Tara Volker from Xbox Game Studios for joining us. Mark Barlet, of course, from Ablegamers for being here. All people we're going to have back on the show to talk with us again in the future. And, of course, on behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Marc Aflalo. Thank you for being with us each and every single week. We will catch you again next week right here on Access Tech Live. Thanks for being with us. See you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Access Tech Live. Follow us online at all social media at Access Tech Live. Email us feedback at accesstechlive.com. Hosted by Stephen Scott in Glasgow and Marc Aflalo in Montreal. Written by Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo. Live show director, Anastasia Spalding-Stenhouse. Technical director, Caitlin Robinson. Audio, Jordan Mulgrave. Live graphics and playback, Kingsley Juco. Graphics coordinator, Eliza Rocco. Integrated described video specialist, M. Williams. Supervising producer, Michelle Dudas. Copyright 2023, Accessible Media, Inc.
An AMI original production.